Welcome to this oral history interview, part of the developing series of interviews focusing on African American experiences on Route 66, centered around Springfield in Greene County, Missouri. My name is Samuel Knox. I am the managing editor of the Unite News publication. This series is supported in part by a grant from the Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program of the National Park Service. Today's date is Saturday, October 3rd, 2015. Our special guest today is Bishop David Knox Jr. He is the founder and senior pastor of Deliverance Temple Ministries in Springfield. This is part two of our interview together. Bishop Knox, welcome and thank you for being our guest today. I want to kind of pick up on some information from our first interview, and I know that you were originally born in Arkansas, but you moved to Springfield with your parents and your brother and sisters early on. And can you tell us a little bit about what were some of your earliest memories growing up in Springfield?
Some of my earliest experiences in Springfield, we lived at 21, we lived on Washington Street. It was, let me get
That's
it back.
okay. Just keep it rolling. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name of the address of the house. Well, anyway, we moved to Springfield by 1939. We lived at 1921 North Washington, right on the corner of Washington and Garfield. And it was a two-story house. We lived there with my brothers and sisters, my mother and dad, and it was a nice house. We lived right in front of a grocery store, and this grocery store had a gasoline pump out front, and it was the kind that you pumped up with your hand, and the gas came in from the top and spilled down, and as you would fill up your car or whatever the container you had, you could see the gas coming down, and it was marked 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallons, and you probably, if you haven't ever seen one, well, it was a glass container, and it had the gallons as you would measure it as it comes down. It was interesting because we enjoyed going to the store. We were right in front of the store, and of course that's dangerous for kids because you want to, there's a lot of things there you'd like to buy or whatever. Of course, money was scarce and you couldn't buy a lot. But in case we got something, we could always run to the store right across the street and get what we needed. One of the things that really kind of stayed with me and impressed me a great deal was the fact that we would leave our house. We were about 3 or 4 blocks from Commercial Street, and we would go up to Chase Street. That was 1 block down from Commercial, and we would walk along the tracks, and we would find buggies that had been abandoned, and we would take the wheels and the axle off of the buggy, the baby buggy, and we would take it back home, and we would start a project on it. We didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't buy a wagon. So we made us a car. We would take the axles and the 2 wheels of the buggy and put them in the front, put a 2x4 on that, and make a cross. And then we would have a seat or another board on the back, and we steer with our feet. And of course, being boys, we had a lot of imagination. We would go all over the country in our imaginary automobile. we would read magazines, and we would get familiar with different places that we saw, and we would just imagine that we were in these places as we traveled around the country in our make-believe automobile. But this took time, and it gave us a lot of experience, and we'd find nails, and we didn't have any, so we would find nails on the street. Whatever we needed, we could generally find it just walking along the street or along the Chase Street. And then we'd go up over the footbridge, walk across the tracks all the way over to Commercial Street. And it was always fun because we would pause on the footbridge and watch the trains go by, several tracks down there, and always activity down there. So then we get to Commercial Street. We walk up and down this Commercial Street, and sometimes if you were fortunate or would get with somebody, we could ride down Boonville down to the square. And this was a Saturday night or Saturday evening adventure. We would go down to the square, and there was a pie in the middle of the square, and we would walk around the pie, and that's what we did on Saturdays, a walk down Commercial Street. And to me, it seemed like there was a bar on every corner, lots of activity. Some were laughing, some were fighting, and whatever, but it was exciting to us as kids to see all this going on. And this was a Saturday event. Couldn't go a lot of places, so we had to stay near the house. So this is what we did. Then to move out a little farther, we would go to the park, Silver Spring Park, and this is where people in the black community would go. There were other parks that were closer to us, like the park, Grant Beach, and there was another park on the north side, but we were not allowed to go to those parks. So we'd go to Silver Spring, and we would talk to our friends and just enjoy ourselves. And one of the restrictions we had to be home before the sun go down. We didn't have watches, so my mother would always make it clear, I want you home before the sun go down. And many times we would get involved in the park, and all of a sudden we'd look up and see the sun setting, and we would take off running for the house, because this was we're not out after dark. So we had a good life in Springfield. It was kind of a dull life there with other people because there wasn't a lot to do, not a lot to get in. One of the interesting things we did, there was a storm sewer that ran about 3 or 4 blocks, and it was adventurous because we would sometime, if we had a flashlight, we'd take it with us. If we didn't, most of the time we didn't, we would travel down through the storm sewer, and you'd come to a break in the street, and you could have a little light, but it was interesting. Several of us and our friends, we would go and walk down through the storm sewer. So we made things happen. It was all good. And then we would, there was a park down right across, let's see, that's High Street. And there was, we would go down and play in the park, play baseball with some of our friends, white friends that were living on Washington Street. It was mixed with black and white, but I think we were the only the second black family on the block. So we had a lot of fun. And there was one event that I remember that there was on the other side of Kearney, as we would go down to the park to play, there was a rock quarry, and it was full of water. And we would play down. Our parents, both of our parents, everybody that were in our little circle, the parents had told us, don't go to the rock quarry. Well, the other guys had gone in there and they would swim. And so I remember we went down one day, and of course that was a little ways from the house, and we figured we were out of sight. Nobody could see us. And apparently somebody told our parents that we were over there. And of course, in that day, everybody looked out for everybody. Parents, if they see you doing something bad, they'd call our parents and tell them, you know. And when we were down there playing, we didn't get in the water, but our parents saw us. Two of our parents, my mother and my little friend, name was Buster. His mother came down, and they saw us over there, and they had already got their switches together, and they ran us back home. And that was quite a deal for us. But about a month later, we were in the park playing, and after we got through playing, we were very hot. And the guy said, let's go over to the rock quarry and cool off over there. And we thought, no, we've been over before, we got caught, so we didn't go. So one of my friends that lived right across the street from us, he went over, he and his buddies, and it was a tragic day because he drowned in the rock quarry. They came home, his friends were coming back, and they told the people at the house, and his parents had said, we had warned you guys, don't go over there. And we did, we'd slip over every now and then. But that day, that was a lesson to us. Obey your parents. We didn't have a lot to do. There wasn't a lot of entertainment for us. We'd make our own entertainment, and that was part of it. But that was a dangerous part. But I'm happy that I listened for one time and didn't go over there because we were all tempted to go. I didn't go, and this was the tragic thing that happened to us. Our little friend got drowned there, and it was a very sad occasion because we were all about 10, 11 years old, and it was just terrible for us. Other adventures that we had, one of the things that really was interesting for me, I joined the Boy Scouts when I was 12 years old, and we had a very interesting, outstanding scout master. His name was Jack Canifax, and we would go to Marshfield, to Arrowhead camp down there over the weekend sometime, and it was exciting for us. Number one, to get away from home. Number two, to get to the camp and just do a lot of things that young boys would do. Good, clean fun, good supervision, and it was great. Another things we would do, we would go on paper drives. Somebody would get a truck, and we would go around and collect papers and take them down to Carshmer's, which was the junkyard. And but it was exciting because we found a lot of comic books in the papers that were being discarded. We found other magazines these were dream books that we had, and it made life bearable for us and exciting. So this was some of the things that happened when we were coming up in Springfield. School was good. We had some excellent teachers. Lincoln School was a school that went from 1 to 12. And this was an experience. You were a first grader, second grader, and you were walking down the halls, and there were the big boys, and they were juniors or seniors, and boy, we looked at those guys in awe and thought, boy, they were great guys. And many times we would watch them play on the field right behind the school, and it gave us something to look up to. We were not separated. We all went together, and they had their classes upstairs. We were down the basement on the first floor, but it was a great experience going to school with those big guys, listening to their conversations, watching them as they played their sports. It was really thrilling to us. The teachers, again, were excellent from grade 1 through 12. One of my favorites was Jack Canifax. He was a minister, and as I grew up, he began to talk to me, and he knew that I was going to church, and I was different from the other guys because my parents had set down certain rules for me, and I had to, were a little different from the other kids that were allowed to do other things. So Jack Canifax was, he would take us to down to Camp Arrowhead in Marshfield, Missouri, and we would have a great time, come back to school, and this was the talk of the school, what we did. Our Boy Scout, I think it was Troop 35. I had a picture of that, but I don't know what happened to my picture. But it was all of us, and this was a great incentive for guys at school. I guess it kept us out of a lot of trouble. We didn't. It was a rare thing for any of our friends and guys to be in jail or be have a problem with police or other people. Maybe there were one or two, but they were crime in that day was almost unheard of among our people, unless it was somebody we didn't know, maybe some of the older people, but far as the kids, maybe one or two that you could think of that might have gotten in trouble from time to time, minor things. But coming up in Springfield was good for me. From 1 to 12, I graduated. I was the president of my class. Of course, our class size, I think we were about 10 of us that came out. There were some that dropped out, some that didn't finish. So, but it was great. We had our proms, and it was interesting getting ready for it. We'd work hard to save a little money so we could give the class ahead of us their prom, then the class behind us would give us support our prom. So the teachers were very helpful to us. I remember one of our male teachers, his name was Mr. Earl Brooks. He drove an old Ford, and as kids we talk about him, and we in fact one time we asked him. He taught science, and we asked him, "Why did you drive that old car? We know you got money. You can buy your new car." Some of the other younger teachers were buying new cars, and he went to the blackboard, and he took the whole 55 minutes that we had to answer questions for us, to tell us why he didn't buy a new car. He went to the board, he showed us that If I bought a new car, it would cost X amount of money. When I drove it off the lot, it would depreciate. So I'd take my money, I bought a couple of old houses that, and these were assets. And he explained to us the difference in recklessly spending your money and spending it wisely. And I remember that to this day, and many times when I go out to buy something excessive, I think about what he said. If you put your money into something that is going to be an asset, then you're much better off than you were just spending money, and it depreciates on you. And of course, as a kid then, we didn't quite understand, and we didn't understand what, that was all about, but he took the time out to explain it to us. And today, I remember, and I try to do the same thing with people that are coming under me, try to explain the difference in just trying to keep up with the Joneses and having money to do what you have to do and have a little bit left over. So I appreciate all the instructions that my teacher gave me. I remember when I had some friends. I said they were friends. Yeah, they were classmates, but they were clowns. And I was in the hall. We just left our English class, and this guy came and jumped up on my back, and I was trying to get him off my back, and the teacher came out and saw us. She thought we were wrestling. Well, I guess whatever. And she took us down to the office, the principal. And of course, the principal was kind of surprised that, I was in the scuffle, because my reputation was, Knox is, he doesn't do things like this. His parents are very respectable. He goes to church and whatever. But the boy had just aggravated me so that I was trying to get him off as fast as I could, but I'm the one that got caught. And we went down to the principal's office, and the principal, well, I hate to do this, but so the other guy's always in trouble. But he said, I'm going to have to send you home, and your mother come back with you, give you a suspension for a couple of days. So we did. And when we got back, of course, everybody was looking. Our office door had glass in it, so you could stand on the outside and look. And when we came back to school, everybody was going, well, what's going to happen, And of course, the other boy came back, and he went on about his business. My mother told me, I want you to get on your knees and apologize to the principal. And I did. Of course, the crowd was around the door. They were looking in, and I knew they were watching me. But I obeyed my mother. I got on my knees, and I begged him pardon for being out of order in the hall, because I was supposed to be something different from this. But anyway, that stuck with me. I guess I'll never forget that, because everybody, and then there were those who came up and said, David, you were, that was great. Your mother took the time out to come back with you and had you to do it publicly. A lot of them thought that was a great situation, but most of my little friends, they kind of laughed and giggled at me and whatever. But I got over it, and I remember at school we had a janitor, and this gentleman, you have to know him to understand him. He took his job seriously. He'd have a big long mop, go down the hall pushing this mop on the concrete floor. And if you didn't move, he'd run over you with his mop. But he never looked up. He was just moving the mop. And of course, I didn't speak to him. He didn't speak to me, whatever. And he was just the kind of guy that, he's off to himself. And one day he came up to me and said, Knox, I've been watching you. And I'm thinking, hey, this guy don't watch nobody. He watches the floor, and he's interested in his job, and that's all he does. And he gave me a compliment, and I thought, wow, that was really something. I never dreamed that this guy was paying any attention to me. I was just one out of the group of kids at school. But anyway, my training and upbringing at home paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed school. It was I don't know, customary. Everybody, we didn't talk about it, we just did it. At the end of the school year, in fact, I graduated in 1952. In 53, they integrated the schools. Of course, what you did, you would graduate, get your job, or basically, you'd leave. Mm-hmm. And most of the guys would leave because there was a lot of employment for African American boys here. St. Louis Street was from the square down about 2 blocks. Within that 2 blocks, there was a shoe shine parlor and a place where they cleaned hats, felt hats. Mm-hmm. And there was shopping down this road, down St. Louis Street, about 2 blocks on both sides of the street. And you would basically, if you stayed, you would get a job maybe at one of the automobile industries. There was a NASCAR, the Buick, and Chevrolet. They were all down on St. Louis Street. Mm-hmm. And you would go to work, and I did too. I went to work for the Nash dealers after I graduated. While I was going to school, I worked for about a year at the Assemblies of God. I was a mail boy down there, but I got a job at one of the automobile places down there, and it was interesting because when I was growing up, you couldn't go to a restaurant, but there was one restaurant down on St. Louis Street that most of the employees, the African American employees, they went to this restaurant. We ate in the back, the kitchen. And of course, you know, once you get involved, they'll tell you where everything is. Got good service, good meals, whatever, but you just couldn't go into the front. Okay, so we ate. Had a good time. We didn't bother with that because that's just the way it was. Somewhere in that interval, I got hired at the Frisco Station. Mm-hmm. That was an experience. Didn't last long because I was working from the graveyard shift from 12 to 8 in the morning. And I think I worked about a week. I could not handle that because I couldn't stay awake. Can't sleep on the job. Good paying job. But this is one of the jobs that the guys could be porters. We could be mail handlers down there. And the porters made good money. They made good tips. But there was I saw the drinking fountain. It had a board up between, it had 2 back to back. And on one side it said color, the other side white. So you drink out of the colored section. The other section, it was just a partition away, just a cardboard or something away, and just had black and white, and you had to get behind that and drink. And of course, we understood, so we did it, no problem. And this was some of the segregation that we went through. Every now and then somebody would call you the N word, and you wasn't paying attention to it because you know, you were used to it. Sometimes the kids, you walking along the street, and little kids with their mother, and the little boy would look up, or the girl would look up at you and say, "Hey, Mama, that's a N word," you know. And but we didn't, you know, we didn't pay any attention to it because basically you were used to it. You wouldn't want to cause trouble because you would be the troublemaker, not them. Mm-hmm. So after I graduated, worked for the car company and Frisco for a little while. Then I decided to go to Kansas City because everybody, basically, when they graduated, this is what you did. It wasn't something that it just seemed to be an unwritten law that you leave Springfield because you just didn't feel that you couldn't advance here. Springfield was good to us, a lot of us, and you know, we did things, but there was not that equilibrium here. You were not on the same basis. But there were a few that stayed and made a good living, and the rest of us, the majority, we left town because that's just what you do. That's where Park Day come in. People come back to Springfield at least once a year to see what's going on, meet their friends, and because they just leave, and of course they left a lot of friends here, and friends would come in from different places. So I don't know whose idea it was, but that's where Park Day originated. People who left Springfield and they came back, and a lot of times they come back to show off. They rent a expensive car and come back, you know, we think, wow, those guys really made it good. And but that's just the way it was. But the atmosphere here wasn't bad. I never had a personal encounter far as the race program goes. Never been stopped by a policeman, and of course, when I hear guys talking about it, I just kind of smile to myself and say, I don't know how I missed that, but I missed it. I don't understand. I mean, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been stopped, pulled over, and, you know, whatever. And I learned to drive when I was 16 years old, and driving ever since. But I hear guys, I said, well, I can imagine this happened. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, you know, when they were profiled and whatever, but somehow it didn't bother me. I never had that experience. So I don't feel the resentment that they feel. And I'm not holding up, you know, that is okay, it's not okay, but it just never happened to me, and so I just feel I was blessed in getting through it because I was basically, I guess I exceeded the speed limits a couple of times and whatever, and but I was blessed. My uncles, my daddy's brothers, they came. My Uncle Hardy Knox, he had the first trash hauling business. At that time, people were burning a lot of wood and coal. So he had a tremendous business hauling ashes, coal, cinders from the basement of apartments, and he did well. Years later, once I moved to Kansas City, I came back to visit, and he offered me, he said, I'm getting too old to do this. He said, I'll made me an offer or deal. I thought, no, I don't think I want to do that. He had a truck, and he finally, you load your truck up. The way the operation went, you would go down to the basement of this apartment building, and there'd be a pile of cinders or ashes or whatever. They put it in a tub. You loaded your tub up, take it up the stairs and to the truck, empty it, come back and do the same thing. My uncle finally got a dump bed for his truck. My daddy got him a truck, but it never worked out good for him. My uncle was more innovative than my father, and he would go to the dump on the north side, and he would go and come back twice, and we're still there because we had to load it, then we had to go to the dump and unload it, one shovel at a time. And he would go and dump his, take off, and of course he made more money, and he was just a better businessman than my father was. But I decided I don't think I want to do that. I'd rather do something else. So I stayed in Kansas City, but my experience was good here in Springfield. I guess exceptional, because I just didn't, the things that happened to other guys just never happened to me. Went to Kansas City, started a church. I went to Kansas City, and after several years, I was gone for 20 years in Kansas City. I finally started a church, St. Paul Church of God in Christ, and after I think I pastored about 7 years up there. Then I had my family began, all my children were born in Kansas City, and in 1974, we moved back to Springfield. The Lord impressed me that this is where He wanted me. My time was up in Kansas City, so we moved back and started a church in Springfield, which was very interesting. I found a building. I didn't have any chairs and no furniture for a church at all. Standing room only for the first month or so. Finally found some chairs that were made available to me, and we began to build from there. My mother and I started Deliverance Temple in 1974. We came down 73, I'm sorry. And but the Lord has blessed us. We had great success here. Nobody could understand why I wanted to come back to Springfield, because the black population down here was next to nil. And but I was successful. I broadcast at KLFJ radio station for 20 years, Saturday at 11:15, and it was a great time. I came on right behind revival time. This was the Assembly of God program, and had good response from the city of Springfield. So,
well, I remember that with your move back to Springfield, that you started from scratch, from just a building, and then you had chairs and furnishings. I believe you started a business while you're here early on. Can you tell us about that business?
Yeah, K&H Construction. While in Kansas City, I worked for the Urban Renewal doing house repair, remodeling, and came back to Springfield, and as I started working with the guy, I was doing the painting, and it was two of us. He was a carpenter and I was the painter, and that went on for about a year, I guess. Then I went on my own. I started K&H Construction, and we worked for the city of Springfield. We had contracts with them. We did the first historical project. It was a Northside Furniture on Commercial and Campbell. And from there we did other projects. We worked for the state of Missouri. I remodeled the employment office on let's see, that's Walnut Street. It was the basement of the. We started in January, and I ended up in late April. So we did a lot of work for the state of Missouri, city of Springfield, and then there were a lot of just work on my own. But I enjoyed it because I enjoyed working for myself. I worked hard, but it was, I enjoyed looking back over my work. I worked in a subdivision here, Copper Mill Estates. It was, I think, one of the first subdivisions that they were building a house out there that was totally, let's see, it was computerized. And so I've had some good jobs. My aim was to please my customers, and I think I did a good job of that. Had very little complaints. The only complaints I had from time to time, there would be people that on the job, there would be some guys that they would tell jokes that African Americans were the brunt of the joke, and they'd laugh, have a big time, and I guess they were trying to impress me. But I understood that these guys didn't pay my salary. I worked for myself. They were not my boss. So I just took it in my stride, and I went on. They'd laugh, and I would just keep doing my job, because when at the end of the day, hey, I got my money. I left them there most of the time doing what they do. But I'm my own boss. They didn't have anything to do with my job. But from time to time, you run across people like this, and it's okay. So it's in anybody's business you find people that will make an issue out of nothing. So you learn to live with it. I learned a lot that you don't have to respond to everything somebody says to you or about you. My job was to please my customer. So that I enjoyed that. I worked with K&H Construction. I had a friend of mine that was not too faithful, but at one time I had at least 11 guys working for me, and but I found out it was, what should I say? By the time I got through cleaning up behind them, making sure everything was good, I was working harder than they were. So I reduced my labor force and started working basically by myself, which I thought was it was good, the best for me, because I had to train the guys to do the work. Then I had to make sure that it was done right. So I did more than they did, and I paid them. So it was interesting. I enjoyed it. I liked construction work, and I learned a lot from the guys that I was working with when being on the job site. So it was a good experience for me. I tell everybody, especially African American people, and I told Sam, my son, that he was doing graphic arts and whatever, and he would go to a job and he'd be the last hired, first laid off, and he asked me about what my thoughts about it. I said, go in business for yourself. So he took my advice, did it, and is doing a great job today, working for himself.
Your first church in Springfield was on Sherman, right at the intersection of Sherman and Division.
Right.
In a storefront right across the street from the next location where you moved to.
Yes.
How did things begin to grow from there?
Well, I think basically being faithful to our program, what we were doing. My mother and I started the church, and my mother, I would write tracts, articles, whatever. My mother she would get on the bus, pass out my tracts. She just did it basically by herself. I would commute down here for about a year. Then we all moved down to Springfield. So it was good. Made a lot of friends. The radio broadcast helped a lot. We had our ups and downs. It seems the churches in Springfield, they were competing, and I never did get involved in competing with any of the groups. I was here to do my part. I felt that the Lord had sent me down here. It wasn't my choice, but when you're working for God, then you do what He wants you to do and not what you want to do. And it has paid off, because we have advanced much farther than I think I could have ever did this in Kansas City, Missouri, where the black population was great. Down here, we've had an integrated church ever since we got started. So I think that it was best for me, and just doing what we do, serving other people. I think this is basically what it's all about. Not competing with people, but serving. And we came out real well. We left the church, we moved across the street from where we started originally, bought the building. I remodeled the building. It was interesting. We paid a roofing company. It was a flat roof, and that's a headache for most everybody. But we paid a company to come in and fix it. They came in and they worked on it. They left town, and then we had to, people would drive by Sherman Street, and most of the time they could look up on top and they'd find me up there patching the roof. And which was very interesting, because people would laugh. They'd come by and said, "Pastor, he's up on the roof more than he's in the sanctuary." And it was true. I did other things there and just worked on it. And of course, it was a joy for me to work on it. And we had a lot of visitors, a lot of kids from Evangel College. Every Sunday, they would pack us out. We had to move to the Vandivort Center to make more room for Sunday morning service, come back over there Sunday night. We would take all of our instruments over, load them up on our van, take them to the Vandivort Center, go up to the 4th floor, set them up Sunday morning, and have service up there, and had a following to follow us up there. And then we'd come back Sunday night for services at Deliverance Temple, till we finally bought a building at 2101 and 5.5 acres there. And as you know, we had a fire there after so long, and we decided to build a new building. And it has been great. We've had our share of challenges, but that's all in the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're doing great.
So before you made the move from the corner of the building at Sherman and Division, about how many people were in the congregation there?
At across the street or
Yes.
or before?
Across the street before you made the move to 2101
Yeah.
Chestnut.
Yeah, we'd have about 75 or 80 because the deacons on Sunday morning, they would have to go find chairs for us. And they bring as many as they could. We had a few chairs that we had there, but the congregation grew. And some of the guys used to tell me from the college, said, well, we came by Sunday morning, but we didn't stop because we knew, we could look at the parking lot and tell that, we couldn't get anybody else in there. So, but we've had a great experience in Springfield with the church. After the fire at 2101, people responded just great. It was fantastic. It was more than what I expected. But here again, I think it's all in being faithful and being committed to God and doing what He has laid out for you to do. And this is what we try so hard to do. And we're still there.
Right. Now, your new building that you built in 2005, where you are right now,
Yes.
the capacity of the sanctuary, that holds about how many people?
About 300 people.
About 300. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Now, I know you have a older brother and two older sisters. What type of work did they do?
My brother was let's see, he was in the Air Force. He was a gunner in a B-17, and he was an airplane mechanic. And he lived in Oakland, California after he retired from the service. My sister Blanche is the one that's next to me in line. She was a registered nurse. She graduated from Bird Hospital, or I guess that's now it's Mercy Hospital.
Yeah, right, Mercy.
Yeah. And my sister Gertha, she's my oldest sister. She was a practical nurse at Cox South. She worked in the maternity section, and so that was, yes, that's our family. I was the baby boy, I was the preacher. My brother was the airplane mechanic. Nurses, my sisters were nurses.
Well, it's kind of ironic. The location of the church now is on Chestnut Expressway, which is one of the routes for Route 66. I know one time it came through St. Louis out to Chestnut, and then the other routes through the city. But that's kind of ironic that you ended up there. And
I thought Sherman Division was one of the best locations in town, and I guess it probably was. But of course, when they opened up Kansas Expressway, Chestnut Expressway, I'll tell you, there's lots of traffic. I think we just go from one good location to the other. So I'm happy we get a lot of exposure there on Chestnut Expressway. It goes from, let's see, if you're coming west, it goes from 60 to 44. So that's two of the main highways coming through Springfield. 44 is old 66, so I think we we're in a good location and got a lot of exposure there.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add? Very interesting time that you grew up in, through the 30s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and to today. Anything else come to mind that you might want to share?
Well, there's just so much there. It just takes time for it to come back and to get it all together. There are a lot of interesting things that happen in Springfield, and to me, I can't think of a unfortunate situation that we've had that happened to me personally here because I was in Springfield. Again, I think it's very unusual, but it happened because, I mean, you know, here I am. I think that the city fathers, for a while, before I left, they were happy with the population of Springfield being about 60,000, maybe 70,000. And of course, I think they intentionally tried to hold down the population because I think they understood that if Springfield began to grow, a lot of other people would come in, and they were happy with the status quo. Mm-hmm. And they just, I think, deliberately stopped. One of the things that kind of bothers me even till now, of course, the fact that I was always self-employed. It seems that in Springfield, minority people can come in from other places. They are shipped into Springfield to fill a position. But people who are here, grassroots people, minority people, have a problem trying to get into establishments, trying to get into better jobs. And this bothered me, and I don't understand why. I talk to a lot of professionals that they come in from other places, and then some have been here. It's hard. People who are qualified, overqualified, can't get a decent job because they have to go out, then come back maybe because Springfield just does not seem to be kind to their grassroots minority people. Maybe it's just the way I look at it, but I've seen too many things that happen like that. I'm happy for the guys that come in, that's fine, but I'd like to see some of the people that live here get an opportunity to do something great. I've always been an entrepreneur. I do my own thing. I have my own business, and it didn't bother me. But for other people, I think it's, I don't understand. Maybe somebody will explain it to me, but I just don't understand that. Okay. And that's just one thing that comes to mind. I don't have a grocery list of things that are derogative, so I don't give Springfield a bad name. I think Springfield has been good. The people have been helpful, and I'm grateful for the people that live here in Springfield.
Okay. We will leave it at that then.
Okay.